You did not find this message by accident. There comes a moment in every seeker's journey when the noise of the world grows heavy, when familiar answers lose their power, and when an invisible pull begins to guide your attention towards something older than memory. It is in that precise moment that certain knowledge reveals itself, not because you searched for it, but because you finally vibrate at the frequency that allows it. This is the truth behind the Book of Thoth. It does not belong to shelves or libraries. It appears only when your inner state crosses an unseen threshold that most people never notice. You may think you clicked on a video, but something deeper clicked inside you first. A tension you can no longer ignore. A question you have carried in silence. A feeling that your life is shifting into a territory you have sensed for years, but never had the language to describe. When a person reaches this point, the universe stops speaking in hints and begins speaking in signs. That is why this message is in front of you now. You are being invited to step into a different level of awareness, one that demands honesty, presence, and the courage to see yourself without distortion. There is a reason sacred knowledge is never delivered early. When the mind is restless, truth becomes noise. When the heart is unprepared, wisdom becomes weight. When the ego is too loud, guidance becomes confusion. Only when a person begins to feel the collapse of old patterns, the discomfort of internal expansion, and the pull toward a life that matches their deeper nature does the universe open a door. You are standing at that door. The question is whether you will cross it or step back into the familiar. This book appears when you stop chasing meaning outside yourself and begin recognizing that meaning has been calling you from within. It appears when your intuition sharpens enough to detect what logic cannot reach. It appears when your inner frequency becomes steady enough to hold truths that would have overwhelmed you before. The universe waits until the noise inside you becomes quiet enough for a different voice to be heard. A voice that does not command. A voice that does not persuade. A voice that simply reveals. If this message resonates, it is because part of you has already begun awakening. Not the dramatic awakening people imagine, but the subtle shift that changes everything. The shift where you stop resisting what you feel. The shift where you start questioning why certain patterns keep returning. The shift where you sense that your life is preparing you for something you have not yet defined. This is the point where the Book of Thoth emerges, not to entertain you, not to impress you, but to initiate you into a deeper understanding of your own consciousness. This is the moment the book chooses you. And now that it has nothing inside, you will remain the same. 1. Cinematic destiny opening the moment the book chooses you. There's a rare moment in a person's life when the outer world slows down just enough for the inner world to speak. You feel it as a subtle tightening in your chest, a quiet pressure behind your thoughts, the unmistakable sense that something is calling you from a place you have not yet explored. That is the moment the Book of Thoth reveals itself. It does not arrive with spectacle. It does not announce its presence. It simply appears when your inner frequency has matured to the point where you can finally understand what it carries. This is why the unprepared can stare at profound wisdom and see nothing, while the ready can glance at a single line and feel their entire perception shift. The book chooses the ones who have crossed an invisible boundary inside themselves. It selects those who can no longer tolerate the weight of their own illusions. It calls to the ones who have begun questioning the meaning behind the events that shape them, the coincidences that were never coincidences, the whisper of intuition they ignored for years. When this book appears, it is because the universe recognizes that you have endured enough cycles, enough losses, enough self-confrontation to finally stop running from your own truth. You stand at the threshold, not by chance, but by merit. Look back at your life for a moment. Notice how everything that once confused you is beginning to form a pattern. Notice how certain people left, certain opportunities collapsed, certain experiences repeated until you could no longer deny the lesson they carried. These patterns are not random. They are the markers of an awakening mind, a consciousness preparing to handle truth without collapsing under its weight. When a person begins to see these markers, the book appears to guide them through the next phase of their evolution. You did not summon this knowledge. You aligned with it. Wisdom of this nature cannot be forced, demanded, or rushed. It opens only for the ones who have cultivated silence in the depths of their own being. Silence is not the absence of noise. Silence is the absence of resistance. When resistance weakens, truth finally has space to enter. That is why this moment feels strangely familiar to you. It is not your first encounter with this call. It is simply the first time you are ready to receive it. There is a memory inside you, older than your current identity. A memory that recognizes this type of knowledge. That memory is why your attention sharpened the moment you pressed play. That memory is why you feel an unexplainable pull toward ancient teachings, symbols, synchronicities, and hidden truths. You are not being presented with new information. You are being reminded of what you already sensed but could not articulate. When the Book of Thoth appears, it does so to those who can no longer live on the surface of themselves. It appears to the ones who feel the quiet ache of destiny pressing against their everyday existence. It appears to the ones who have begun to awaken without realizing it. And now that it has appeared for you, the next step is unavoidable. You will no longer see your life the same way. You will no longer interpret events the same way. You will no longer move through the world asleep to your own potential. You have crossed the point of no return. The book has chosen you. And with that choice comes a deeper law guiding everything that happens next. 2. The hidden law of readiness. Why certain knowledge only arrives at the right time. Every ancient teaching follows a law that most people never perceive. A law older than language and deeper than belief. It states that wisdom can only enter a mind that has been prepared by experience, not by deceit, not by curiosity, not by ambition, but by the quiet transformation that happens when a person can no longer hide from themselves. This is the hidden law of readiness. It is the force that determines when certain knowledge appears, why some truths remain invisible until the exact moment they are needed, and why the Book of Thoth reveals itself only when the inner landscape of a person reaches the point where truth becomes nourishment instead of disruption. You may think readiness comes from learning more, treeing arder, or seeking answers without rest. In truth, readiness is an energetic alignment. It is the shift that occurs when your internal world becomes stable enough to hold what once would have shattered you. A person becomes ready, not when they crave knowledge, but when they can receive it without distorting it through fear, ego, or emotional chaos. This is why you may have encountered fragments of deeper wisdom in the past, yet felt nothing. You are not in the state required to translate it into transformation. Now, you are. Think about the moments in your life when you tried to push ahead before your time. Relationships you chased that were not aligned. Goals you forced when your inner state was fragmented. Answers you demanded without understanding the questions shaping you. Each of those moments taught you the same silent lesson. When the mind is not prepared, nothing reveals itself. When the heart is not steady, everything feels uncertain. When the inner frequency is not aligned, wisdom becomes noise. Only after you lived through cycles you did not understand, after you endured the collapse of old identities and survived the emptiness that followed, did something inside you settle into the space required for awakening. The hidden law of readiness is not a reward. It is recognition. When your inner state reaches a certain purity of intention, a certain clarity of perception, the universe responds. It stops shielding you from truths you were once too fragile to hold. It begins placing signs in your path with precision. People, APA, ideas surface. Intuition strengthens. The very fabric of your perception begins to reorganize itself around a higher understanding. This alignment is not coincidence. It is the indication that your consciousness has passed the invisible initiations required for deeper knowledge. Look carefully at the events that shaped you. Notice how the hardest moments stripped away what was false. Notice how the quiet phases forced you to listen inwardly. Notice how the repetition of certain experiences pushed you to evolve. These were not punishments. They were calibrations. The universe uses experience to refine the vessel so that truth can be delivered without distortion. When you become capable of holding a higher frequency, wisdom flows toward you effortlessly. It no longer needs to be sought. It recognizes you. This is why the Book of Thoth appears now. You have reached a point where your consciousness no longer rejects truth in favor of comfort. You have endured enough to understand that clarity is more valuable than protection. You have grown enough to realize that the knowledge you seek is not something external. It is the awakening of something that was dormant within you. The universe does not give you answers. It gives you the ability to perceive them. You are ready because your inner world has become still enough to hear what was always there. And now that you stand at this level of awareness, the universe begins revealing the tests you have already passed, without knowing they were tests at all. 3. The silent tests of the universe, the trials most people don't recognize. If the universe revealed its tests directly, most people would prepare for them with calculation, instead of sincerity. That is why the trials that shape awareness are hidden inside ordinary moments, disguised as circumstances you believed were obstacles, rather than initiations. You've passed through many of these trials without understanding their purpose. Only now, standing at this stage of readiness, can you look back and recognize that every difficulty carried a specific intention. These silent tests were designed to break the versions of you that could not hold higher knowledge, and to strengthen the versions of you that could. One of the first trials is collapse, not the dramatic collapse people imagine, but the quiet disintegration of the identity you once depended on. It is the moment when the structures you built around your comfort begin to fall apart. Plans stop working. People you relied on fade. Certainty dissolves. At the time, it felt like punishment. In truth, it was initiation. The universe removes stability, not to harm you, but to expose who you are without your illusions. Collapse forces you to see what you were avoiding. It forces you to listen to the voice within that you ignored for years. Another test appears as an emptiness that feels almost unbearable. It is the space between the old world and the new, the silence after everything familiar has vanished. Most people try to fill this emptiness quickly with distractions, relationships, or noise. You didn't. You remained long enough to experience the discomfort without numbing it. That endurance was a test. The emptiness you felt was not a void, it was a clearing, a space carved out for new consciousness to enter. Only a person who can sit with their own emptiness learns how to receive truth without twisting it into something convenient. There was also the loss of identity. You reached points in your life where you no longer recognized yourself. The motivations that once drove you lost their meaning. The desires you chased no longer satisfied you. The version of you that once felt solid became transparent. This loss was not failure. It was refinement. When an identity becomes too small for the next stage of your evolution, the universe dismantles it. You are not losing yourself. You are outgrowing yourself. This test measures your ability to surrender the person you were in order to become the person you need to be. The most subtle test is internal expansion. It is the uncomfortable sensation of growing beyond your environment, your beliefs, and your old emotional patterns. You felt it as restlessness, discontent, or the feeling that something important was trying to reach you from the inside. Many people panic when expansion begins. They cling to routine because growth threatens their sense of control. You, however, allowed the discomfort to move through you. You let expansion stretch your awareness instead of resisting it. That willingness proved something essential. It showed that you could handle transformation without collapsing back into familiar limitations. These tests were never meant to be recognized in the moment. Their power comes from how they reshape you quietly. Only someone who endured them without closing their heart becomes capable of reading the deeper patterns of existence. This is why the Book of Thoth reveals itself only after the trials are completed. Wisdom does not appear to those who avoid difficulty. It appears to those who have been refined by it. Now that you have passed these hidden trials, something profound is about to unfold. There is a moment every awakened soul reaches. A threshold so subtle that most people cross it without knowing. You are approaching that moment now. 4. The threshold moment, the exact instant a soul becomes eligible for higher knowledge. There comes a moment in a person's evolution that is so quiet, so subtle, that it rarely announces itself. You do not feel fireworks. You do not feel enlightenment. You do not feel powerful. Instead, you feel a shift so delicate that most people dismiss it as nothing. Yet this moment marks the exact point where a soul becomes capable of receiving higher knowledge. It is the instant where your internal world stops chasing answers and begins resonating with them. This is the threshold moment, and you have already crossed it. This moment arrives when your mind no longer approaches life through the lens of resistance. You stop arguing with your experiences. You stop blaming circumstances. You stop demanding that the world align with your preferences. Instead, you begin to observe. You begin to question. You begin to recognize patterns that were once invisible. You realize that nothing comes to you randomly. Every challenge, every loss, every silence held a meaning you were not yet equipped to interpret. When this realization anchors itself in your awareness, the threshold opens. Another sign of crossing the threshold is the shift in the quality of your attention. You start noticing things you once overlooked. Small synchronicities catch your eye. Subtle feelings become louder than external noise. You no longer fill every empty moment with distraction because you sense that silence carries information. This heightened attention is not forced. It emerges naturally, as if something inside you has awakened from a long sleep and is finally ready to look at the world without distortion. This clarity is the foundation that allows higher knowledge to enter. The threshold moment also reveals itself in your relationship with truth. There was a time when uncomfortable truths felt like threats, when you preferred pleasant illusions over honest reflection. That time is gone. You now feel an internal pull toward authenticity, even when it challenges your identity. You no longer fear the truth because you recognize that deception only delays what your soul already knows. This maturity signals to the universe that you can hold wisdom without twisting it into something easier to accept. When a person reaches this stage, revelation becomes possible. Another quiet indicator is the way you respond to your own inner voice. In the past, intuition was something you noticed but rarely trusted. You hesitated, overthought, or ignored it in favor of logic or fear. Now you find yourself drawn to the subtle impressions that arise from within. You sense that intuition is not random. It is a language. It is a form of memory. It is the whisper of a deeper intelligence guiding you toward alignment. When your intuition becomes louder than your hesitation, the threshold is crossed. Yet the most important sign is this: the moment you stop looking for the book and realize the book has been looking for you. This shift marks the point where your consciousness aligns with the frequency of the knowledge you seek. It is the precise instant where your inner state becomes capable of handling truths that operate beyond ordinary perception. You no longer approach wisdom with the urgency of someone seeking escape. You approach it with the steadiness of someone seeking understanding. That steadiness is what opens the door. You have reached the threshold. You may not feel different, but your perception has changed. Your awareness has expanded. Your inner world has matured to the point where knowledge no longer needs to be hidden from you. This book appears because you can finally meet it without fear, without distortion, and without the illusions that once clouded your vision. From here forward, nothing that comes to you is accidental. Every insight, every symbol, every realization has purpose and precision. Now that you have crossed the threshold, it is time to understand what the Book of Thoth truly is and why it appears only to those who have awakened to their deeper nature. 5. The symbol of the book, what the Book of Thoth actually represents. Before you go any further, you must understand the truth that most seekers overlook. The Book of Thoth is not an artifact you hold. It is not a relic lost in ancient temples or a secret text guarded by distant initiates. Its pages are not made of paper. Its ink is not made of pigment. The book is a symbol, a doorway, a representation of the moment your inner world becomes capable of reading the subtle architecture of existence. What you are encountering now is not an external object. It is the activation of an internal faculty. This book represents the awakening of your deeper memory. Not the memory of your mind, which forgets quickly, but the memory stored in the core of your consciousness. There are truths you have encountered before, long before this lifetime. Truths you sensed during moments of silence, intuition, or déjà vu. The Book of Thoth is the framework that brings those ancient impressions into clarity. It does not teach you new ideas. It organizes what you already know but could not decode until now. To understand the book, imagine knowledge that does not speak in words but in symbols. Imagine a language that reveals itself through patterns, intuition, synchronicities, and shifts in perception. Imagine a wisdom that is not learned, but recognized. The book is the lens through which this type of knowledge becomes visible. When your consciousness reaches the level required to interpret these signals, the book appears, not as a physical text, but as the sudden ability to understand what was once incomprehensible. Another dimension of the book is intuition. Most people treat intuition as a feeling. It is far more than that. Intuition is the mind's first contact with higher intelligence. It is the spark that connects your physical awareness to the deeper blueprint of your path. When the Book of Thoth appears, your intuition sharpens. You begin noticing truths beneath the surface of events. You sense meanings hidden behind coincidences. You feel a pull toward insights that seem to reach you from nowhere. This is not imagination. It is recognition. It is the awakening of the internal book. The Book of Thoth also symbolizes the activation of dormant faculties. Every human being carries latent capacities for clarity, perception, inner knowing, and spiritual intelligence. Most never wake these capacities because they drown them with noise. But when the silent tests refine you, when the threshold is crossed, these dormant faculties begin to stir. You start perceiving layers of reality beyond the obvious. You interpret patterns you once ignored. You understand your life with a clarity you could not access before. The book is the internal system that translates these perceptions into understanding. There is also a deeper layer. The book represents truth that cannot be manipulated. It is the part of wisdom that remains pure regardless of human interpretation. When you align with this truth, you begin to see your own motives with honesty. You see how your fear shaped your choices. You see how your desires clouded your perception. You see how your resistance distorted your path. The book reveals these things not to punish you, but to free you from the illusions that held you captive. This is why only certain souls encounter the book. It appears when you are mature enough to handle truth without bending it to fit your expectations. It appears when you are strong enough to face yourself without turning away. It appears when you are disciplined enough to choose clarity over comfort. What you are accessing now is not external knowledge. It is the awakening of the inner book you have carried with you since the beginning of your existence. Now that you understand what the book represents, you will begin to notice how the universe confirms your readiness through signs that grow clearer, louder, and more precise. The next step is recognizing these signals and understanding how synchronicity reveals your alignment. 6. The calling of synchronicity, how the universe signals readiness. Once the Book of Thoth reveals itself within you, the universe shifts its method of communication. It stops whispering and begins presenting signs with a clarity that feels impossible to ignore. These signs do not appear to impress you. They appear to guide you. Synchronicity becomes the language that bridges your inner state with the external world. The more aligned you become, the more precise these signals grow. At first, they arrive subtly, then they become unmistakable, forming a pattern that feels too intentional to be coincidence. This is the calling of synchronicity. Synchronicity emerges when your inner world matches the frequency of your next stage of evolution. It is not random alignment. It is a response. When you reach a certain depth of awareness, the universe begins reflecting your state back to you through symbolic events. You notice repeated numbers, repeated words, repeated themes. Ideas you are silently contemplating show up unexpectedly in conversations, books, or strangers' sentences. Dreams repeat symbols you saw during the day. Thoughts you ignore return through unexpected situations. These are not accidents. They are confirmations that your consciousness is opening. One of the first signs of synchronicity is the emergence of repeated symbols. These symbols may appear in dreams, in daily life, in media, or in moments you are not paying attention. A symbol is not meaningful because it is rare. It is meaningful because it is persistent. The universe repeats what you are ready to recognize. When a symbol begins appearing in multiple contexts, it is because you have reached the frequency where that symbol holds significance for your evolution. Another form of synchronicity appears through recurring dreams. These dreams are not random stories. They are transmissions. They use imagery to communicate truths your conscious mind is not yet ready to process logically. When a dream repeats, it is because your inner state is asking you to pay attention. Recurring dreams often carry the same emotional tone, the same environment, or the same message. They are invitations. They are reminders that the deeper part of your consciousness is guiding you from within. Synchronicity also shows up through what appear to be chance encounters. You cross paths with someone who delivers a sentence you needed to hear. You find yourself in the exact place where a crucial realization occurs. You receive insight from a completely unexpected source. These moments feel orchestrated because they are synchronicity, places people in your path who act as mirrors, catalysts, or messengers. When you are aligned, even a brief encounter carries significance. There is also the sudden burst of clarity that often surprises you. You may be walking, resting, or focused on something unrelated when a realization forms with complete certainty. The thought feels like it did not come from you. It arrives fully shaped, carrying weight and precision. This clarity is not random. It is the sign that your intuition is activated and your perception is expanding. When the book of Thoth awakens within you, clarity becomes more frequent because you are finally receptive to guidance. The most profound form of synchronicity is the sensation of being guided. You begin to feel as if something is subtly arranging your steps. You sense direction without needing external validation. Decisions become lighter because you no longer rely solely on logic. You trust the internal pull that leads you toward alignment. This guidance is not external. It is the reflection of your inner readiness. When you move with this guidance, life begins to unfold with an ease that feels both unfamiliar and natural. Synchronicity does not occur to those who are lost. It occurs to those who are being found. It is not a sign of spiritual privilege, but a sign of internal awakening. The book of Thoth reveals itself in silence, but synchronicity reveals your readiness. Through the world around you, every sign you have noticed recently is part of this calling. The universe has been speaking to you, preparing you for what comes next. Now that you understand how synchronicity confirms your awakening, it is time to explore why certain souls are drawn to hidden knowledge long before they understand it. This pull is not curiosity. It is memory resurfacing. Siete. The ancient memory why certain souls are drawn to hidden knowledge. There is a reason certain people feel an immediate connection to ancient teachings, while others remain indifferent. This attraction does not come from curiosity, intelligence, or personality. It comes from something far older, a memory that does not belong to your current identity, a memory that rises from a deeper layer of consciousness, untouched by time, untouched by culture, untouched by the noise that shapes your ordinary life. This memory is the true origin of your awakening, and it is the reason the Book of Thoth feels familiar even though you have never encountered it physically. From the moment you were born, a subtle part of you sensed there was more to reality than what you could see. You felt drawn to symbols, mysteries, philosophies, and truths that others ignored. You questioned what others accepted without thinking. You felt tension between what society called normal and what your intuition recognized as incomplete. This tension was not rebellion. It was recognition. Certain souls carry a form of ancient awareness that does not fully sleep, even during the years when the conscious mind is distracted by the demands of the world. This ancient memory reveals itself through attraction. You are drawn to hidden knowledge not because you want to escape your life, but because something inside you remembers a time when truth was not fragmented. You feel resonance with concepts you have never studied. You understand metaphors that others dismiss. You sense meaning in patterns without needing explanation. These experiences are not imagination. They are glimpses of the deeper intelligence embedded within your consciousness. When the Book of Thoth awakens, these glimpses intensify. Another sign of this ancient memory is the feeling of déjà vu when encountering spiritual ideas for the first time. You read a sentence and feel as if you are remembering instead of learning. You hear a concept and it settles into your mind with unnatural ease. You encounter a symbol and it activates a silent familiarity you cannot explain. This sense of recognition is one of the clearest signs that your soul has carried wisdom across lifetimes. The knowledge is not new to you. Only your awareness of it is. Certain souls are also drawn to solitude without knowing why. You may have felt an unexplained need for quiet, reflection, or isolation at different stages of your life. This need was not a sign of weakness or withdrawal. It was your inner intelligence creating space for memory to resurface. Ancient knowledge cannot rise through noise. It rises through stillness. Every period of silence you experienced was preparing you for this moment. There is also the subtle ability to sense when something is true, even before you can justify it. You have felt this many times. A truth lands in your mind with weight and clarity. You know it before you understand it. This is the voice of your ancient memory moving through your awareness. You are not guessing. You are remembering. The Book of Thoth teaches through recognition. Its wisdom awakens through impressions rather than explanations. This is why you are drawn to hidden knowledge now. The world has not changed. You have. The tests you survived, the threshold you crossed, the synchronicities you recognized, all work together to unlock a deeper layer of memory. Once this memory awakens, everything in your life begins to reorganize around a higher understanding. You start seeing your experiences as lessons, your challenges as initiations, and your intuition as guidance. This is the influence of the ancient memory resurfacing. Now that you understand the source of this attraction, it becomes clear why awakening requires an internal transformation before knowledge can unfold. The next stage is not about remembering. It is about becoming the version of yourself capable of living in alignment with what you now perceive. Ocho, the sacred encounter. What happens when the book finally appears? There is a moment in every seeker's journey when the symbolic becomes real. When the invisible reveals its presence, when something you once believed was metaphor begins to interact with you directly. This is the sacred encounter with the Book of Thoth. It does not appear as an object in your hands. It appears as a shift inside you so profound that you cannot deny it. The encounter is not seen. It is recognized. It is the sudden realization that your perception has crossed into a deeper layer of reality, one that responds to your awareness with precision you cannot explain through logic alone. The book appears in the form of a feeling that settles into your consciousness with unmistakable gravity. It is the sense that you have stepped onto a path that has been waiting for you long before you knew it existed. You feel guided without knowing by what. You feel watched over without sensing a presence. You feel prepared without understanding how you learned what you now seem to know. This is not imagination. This is the internal alignment that opens the channel between your awareness and the deeper intelligence that has always been present beneath your experiences. The sacred encounter often arrives during moments that seem ordinary. You may be alone in a quiet room, walking without direction, staring at a familiar space, or thinking about nothing in particular when suddenly a wave of clarity moves through you. It is not dramatic. It is not loud. It is decisive. You feel an inner click, a recognition that something has shifted. Your mind becomes still. Your heart becomes steady. Your breath deepens. In that stillness, you sense that a new dimension of understanding is unfolding within you. This is the moment the book reveals itself. Another sign of the sacred encounter is the sudden coherence of your life story. Events that once felt random begin connecting in ways that feel impossibly precise. You see the meaning behind your failures, the purpose behind your losses, the lessons hidden inside your most difficult moments. You realize nothing was wasted, nothing was accidental. Every experience was part of the preparation required for this moment. The book does not show you new information. It illuminates what was already present. It brings order to what felt chaotic. It reveals the architecture behind your path. You may also feel a heightened awareness that seems to sharpen your intuition. Insights arrive effortlessly. You sense the emotional intentions of others. You detect truth beneath words. You feel guided in decisions you once doubted. You perceive patterns you previously overlooked. This sensitivity is not new. It was dormant. The book awakens it. When this happens, the world does not change. Your relationship to it does. You begin seeing reality as a conversation between your inner state and the outer experience, each reflecting the other with perfect accuracy. A deeper part of the sacred encounter is the feeling of being pulled forward by something greater than your personal desires. You no longer chase. Meaning reveals itself. You no longer search for direction. Direction emerges. You no longer rely solely on your thoughts. You trust the intelligence moving beneath them. The book becomes the compass of your consciousness, guiding you toward the version of yourself you were always meant to embody. This encounter also brings a quiet certainty that cannot be explained to others. You feel aligned in a way that is beyond emotion. You feel connected in a way that transcends belief. You feel responsible in a way that demands sincerity. The sacred encounter is not a mystical performance. It is a recognition of your place in the order of things. It is the moment you realize you are no longer wandering. You are being guided toward a deeper purpose that is unfolding with precision. Now that the sacred encounter has opened this inner channel, the next step is learning how to interpret what the book reveals. Because the Book of Thoth does not speak through sentences. It speaks through symbols, intuition, perception, and the hidden language of reality itself. 9. The decoding how to interpret what the book shows you. The Book of Thoth does not reveal its knowledge in words you can underline or paragraphs you can quote. It speaks in a different language, a language of alignment, a language of patterns, symbols, dreams, and sensations. It communicates through the structure of your life, through the timing of events, through the intensity of certain emotions and the stillness that follows them. To decode this book is not to read, but to perceive, not to analyze, but to resonate. What it shows you cannot be grasped through intellect alone. It must be interpreted through presence. You begin decoding the book the moment you stop assuming meaning is something given to you. Meaning is something you translate. A dream is not just a dream. A symbol is not just a symbol. A coincidence is not just chance. Each contains layers of message, layers of intention. The more still your mind becomes, the more clearly these messages reach you. Clarity is not the result of searching. It is the result of listening. When your mind quiets enough to stop adding, altering, or doubting what arrives, interpretation begins. Symbols are one of the book's primary channels. They appear in your dreams, your thoughts, your environment. They repeat until your awareness sharpens enough to notice them. The symbol of an eye, a serpent, a spiral, a threshold, a mirror. Each carries weight because each has appeared across civilizations, cultures, and time periods for a reason. These are not decorative. They are encoded transmissions. Their meaning is not fixed. Their meaning is tailored to the moment you see them. The question is never what the symbol means universally. The question is what it means to your current state of being. The book teaches in symbols because symbols bypass resistance. They trigger memory directly. Another form of decoding happens through shifts in perception. You will begin to notice that certain insights enter your awareness fully formed. They do not arrive as conclusions from logic, but as inner certainties. These are not thoughts you build. They are messages you receive. The moment you feel them, you know they are true. You may not be able to explain them immediately, but you feel their resonance deep within your body. This is the language of inner knowing. It is how the book writes itself into your consciousness, not through facts, but through undeniable recognition. The book also speaks through emotion, not reactive emotion, but emotion that arrives with depth and clarity. You may feel sudden grief, reverence, wonder, or love without any obvious external trigger. These are not mood swings. They are energetic downloads. Each one opens a layer of awareness that you were previously disconnected from. Your emotions become keys. When honored instead of suppressed, they unlock deeper messages hidden beneath your ordinary reactions. Dreams become another portal for decoding. In dreams, the mind is no longer filtered by the rational structures that limit interpretation. You are free to encounter truth in metaphor, in archetype, in symbol. When the same figure appears across multiple dreams, or when a particular emotion lingers long after waking, the book is using your subconscious to speak directly to your deeper awareness. These dreams are not to be explained away. They are to be sat with, allowed to unfold in your reflection, treated as sacred instructions, disguised in surreal form. Above all, decoding the Book of Thoth requires humility. The moment you believe you have fully understood it, you have stopped listening. The book is a living intelligence. It reshapes itself according to your evolution. What you decode today will transform tomorrow. Its wisdom does not conclude. It deepens. The more sincere your attention becomes, the more layers it reveals. You do not master this book. You become a vessel for its teachings to flow through. Now that you are learning to interpret the messages correctly, your internal reality will begin to shift. This is where transformation no longer feels symbolic. This is where the architecture of your life rearranges itself to reflect the truth you now carry. 10. The shift in reality. What changes after you receive the knowledge? Once the Book of Thoth begins to reveal itself within you, reality no longer behaves the way it once did. What you see, what you feel, how you interpret, how you respond, everything begins to rearrange. The world does not change. Your position within it does. And from that new position, you begin to perceive structures, patterns, and signals that were previously hidden in plain sight. This shift is not philosophical. It is experiential. It is not a theory you debate. It is a frequency you now live in. The first thing that changes is your sense of guidance. You no longer feel like you are moving blindly through a chaotic world. There is an order to things that you can now sense beneath the surface. Decisions that once brought anxiety now arrive with clarity. Directions that once seemed uncertain now carry an undercurrent of knowing. It's not that life becomes easier. It's that you are no longer fighting its flow. You begin moving with it, recognizing that what aligns will come and what resists is no longer meant to be forced. Another transformation is your relationship with thought. The mind no longer dominates your perception. You begin to sense when a thought arises from fear and when it arises from intuition. You stop believing everything you think. You observe your thoughts like currents in a river, letting them pass without clinging to them. This detachment is not indifference, it is mastery. When the Book of Thoth opens within you, clarity becomes more important than control. You prefer seeing truthfully over being right. You release the need to defend illusions because you now recognize them for what they are. Emotional clarity also becomes sharper. Where you once reacted, you now respond. Where you once spiraled in emotional loops, you now pause, breathe, feel, and understand. Emotions no longer dictate your behavior. They become teachers. You track their origins. You examine their patterns. You use them to deepen your awareness instead of escaping into distraction. This change in emotional regulation is not a result of suppression. It is the result of spiritual maturity. The kind of maturity that comes only when inner chaos gives way to inner space. Your perception of others transforms as well. You stop judging people for what they show and begin sensing what they carry. You see through masks. You feel the dissonance between someone's words and their energy. You intuit motives without needing explanations. And yet, instead of condemning what you see, you simply step back into discernment. You are no longer obligated to engage with every vibration. You recognize what aligns with your path and what does not, and you move accordingly, without drama, without resistance. There is also a visible shift in what you attract. People, opportunities, insights. They begin to reflect your new internal state. Chaos begins to leave your life, not because you force it out, but because it no longer matches your vibration. You no longer entertain what weakens your alignment. You do not chase what drains your peace. Your energy becomes selective, not because you are closing off, but because you are refining. Refinement is the natural result of awakening. The Book of Thoth never guides you toward expansion without precision. Even time feels different. You experience moments where time seems to slow down, where everything aligns with strange synchronicity, where you are exactly where you are supposed to be without effort. These moments are not anomalies. They are reflections of internal coherence. When your inner world is in order, the external world bends to mirror that order. This is not magic. It is law. And now you live inside that law. All of this begins with subtlety, but as you continue, the shift becomes permanent. Your nervous system calibrates to calm. Your thoughts become instruments of clarity. Your emotions become maps of truth. Your presence begins to influence the space around you. You no longer feel like someone trying to awaken. You feel like someone who has already begun. And now that the internal reality has changed, the question arises, how do you know this awakening is real and not just another phase of insight? The next revelation will give you the signs the universe uses to confirm your transformation. 11. Universal confirmation, how you know the awakening is real. There comes a point where doubt fades, not because you force yourself to believe, but because the universe begins to confirm your transformation through patterns so clear, so personal, so precise, that disbelief becomes unnecessary. These confirmations do not arrive with ceremony. They arrive with timing, with alignment, with internal shifts that reflect externally in ways too accurate to be dismissed. This is how the universe speaks to those who have truly begun to awaken, not with promises, but with reflection. One of the first confirmations is that you stop forcing. You no longer try to bend reality to your expectations. You no longer chase what resists or hold on to what is already fading. You move with what flows and release what contracts. There is no panic in letting go. There is no fear in missing out. You sense that what is meant for your path arrives without resistance, and what leaves does so because its lesson is complete. This is not passivity. This is trust built from alignment. You no longer act from desperation. You act from coherence. Another confirmation is the rise of internal calm, even in moments of uncertainty, where anxiety once rushed in to fill every gap of clarity. Now, silence remains, not emptiness, but quiet awareness. You feel space between reaction and response. You feel grounded in situations that once unraveled you. You do not need to know every detail of the future. You are not paralyzed by the unknown. You sense, without needing to explain, that something greater is moving through your life. This calm is not emotional numbness. It is the nervous system of a soul that no longer fights what it is becoming. You begin attracting truth, not as an idea, but as a vibration. People who speak with clarity enter your space. Insights that match your inner questions appear. Situations that test your alignment unfold, not to punish you, but to anchor what you've begun to embody. Truth no longer feels threatening. It feels like relief. You want to see things as they are, even when they challenge you. The awakening becomes real when you stop asking the universe to protect your illusions and start thanking it for revealing them. Another confirmation is your detachment from illusions. You no longer crave validation from the world around you. Praise doesn't seduce you. Criticism doesn't break you. You feel the difference between performance and purpose. You step away from spaces that reward appearance over substance. You stop trying to convince others of your worth. You feel your own value in silence. You detach not because you become cold, but because you've become centered. Illusions no longer anchor your sense of self. Reality does. And then, perhaps the deepest sign of all, you begin trusting timing. You stop rushing. You stop doubting delays. You stop measuring your growth against external milestones. You sense that every moment, even the ones that feel slow or still, is part of something moving with perfect intelligence. This trust doesn't come from logic. It comes from experience. You've seen how everything that left made space. You've seen how everything that broke you built something deeper. You've seen how what felt like a detour was preparation. This is the trust that marks the soul who stopped resisting and started aligning. You know the awakening is real when you no longer need proof. You feel it in your body. You hear it in your breath. You witness it in the way your life begins to mirror your inner order. You sense it when you walk into spaces and shift the energy without speaking. You recognize it when you are no longer triggered by what used to define you. You see it when your presence becomes a quiet force of coherence in a world built on noise. And once this confirmation settles into your being, the universe no longer withholds what you were meant to carry. But it does place weight on you. Because now you're not just someone who has awakened. You are someone who must walk with that awareness in a world that often prefers sleep. The next revelation will show you what that responsibility truly means and why higher knowledge is never granted without it. 12. The responsibility of the awakened, why the universe doesn't reveal this to everyone. Awakening is not an escape. It is an entry. The moment deeper knowledge enters your awareness, the weight of that knowledge settles into your life. It does not crush you. It refines you. But it also demands something that cannot be faked, borrowed, or bypassed. It demands responsibility, the kind that stretches beyond behavior, the kind that changes your relationship with reality itself. This is why the universe does not hand sacred insight to everyone. It waits, it watches, it tests. It protects the gates of wisdom because what lies beyond them is power. And power in the hands of the unprepared is always destructive. The awakened are not chosen. They are qualified through the way they carry what they see. You are no longer allowed the illusion of ignorance. You are no longer able to pretend you didn't understand what the signs meant. You are no longer permitted to act out of alignment without consequence. What once felt like error now feels like betrayal of the self. What once passed unnoticed now weighs heavy on your spirit. This is the cost of clarity. The responsibility to live in harmony with it. The first layer of this responsibility is internal. Your commitment to truth over comfort. You no longer have the luxury of justifying falsehoods to preserve the familiar. You feel the friction the moment you speak what isn't aligned, the moment you entertain what no longer fits your path. You are not punished. You are simply more sensitive now. More attuned to the distortion. The universe begins holding you to the same standard that it used to prepare you. Not to shame you, but to purify your frequency. The more you know, the more your integrity becomes your power. Another layer of responsibility is how you influence others. People begin sensing something in you. A presence, a calm, a silence that speaks before words. They mirror themselves through you, sometimes without realizing. Your energy becomes a reflection, and with that comes weight. You can uplift or wound with a glance, a silence, a decision. The awakened carry a responsibility to guard their energy, not just for themselves, but for what they radiate into every space they enter. Presence becomes influence, and influence must be carried with care. You also become responsible for your inner architecture. The clarity you've received is not a gift to be displayed. It is a structure to be lived through. You are responsible for cleaning your inner space, for maintaining the disciplines that keep your awareness sharp. This includes what you consume, what you entertain, what you tolerate, what you allow to grow inside your thoughts. The awakened cannot afford to drift. Consciousness demands continuity. The more light you carry, the more subtle the shadows become, and the more precise your responsibility must be. There is also the responsibility of embodiment. Awakening is not just about insight, it's about application. You are not asked to preach. You are asked to live, to model coherence in a world that feeds on contradiction, to remain grounded while holding vision, to speak only when words serve alignment, to act only when action serves clarity. The awakened are not loud. They are accurate. Their power does not come from their voice. It comes from their vibration. You are now responsible for protecting that vibration with your choices. This is why so few reach this level, not because the universe withholds it, but because most are not ready to live at the level their knowledge would demand from them. Insight is easy. Discipline is rare. You have been chosen not by fate, but by your willingness to evolve when it would have been easier to numb, to regress, to hide. You now stand in a place where truth cannot be separated from action. That is the mark of someone who is truly awake. The book of Thoth is not a text. It is a template, a blueprint for living with such alignment that every breath becomes a transmission. And now that you carry it, the final message waits for you. Not Alison, a transmission, a final whisper that only the ready can receive. 13. The final transmission of Thoth, the message only the ready will understand. You have come far, not through distance, but through depth. You have crossed the unseen gates. You have passed the quiet tests. You have shed identities like old skins and stood still in the silence when lesser voices begged you to return. And now, at the threshold of remembering, a final message waits, not to explain, but to awaken. This is not knowledge for the mind. It is alignment for the soul. It is the transmission of a truth that cannot be taught because it was always yours. Listen, you are not here to accumulate wisdom. You are here to become it. You are not here to collect insights. You are here to transform into the embodiment of what they demand. Every truth you carry must be lived, or it becomes noise. Every alignment you feel must be protected, or it fades. The world around you will not reward this path. It will not applaud your silence, your restraint, your presence. But the universe will. Life will shape itself around the vibration you maintain. Energy will obey the command of your coherence. You were not made to follow. You were made to remember, and remembering is not nostalgia. It is reconstruction. You are rebuilding yourself from fragments of truth you once dismissed. You are recovering the architecture of your soul, and every act of discipline, every breath of stillness, every choice made without validation is a laying of stone upon stone. You are not becoming something new. You are unearthing something ancient, something sacred, something beyond the reach of those still hypnotized by noise. This world will ask you to prove yourself. Do not prove nothing. Let your presence speak. Let your absence speak louder. Let the calm in your eyes be the answer. No one knows how to question. You are not here to convince. You are here to illuminate. Not with fire, but with stillness. Not with volume, but with clarity. Let others chase. Let others shout. You walk. You breathe. You move like someone who has seen behind the veil and returned, not with fear, but with purpose. The book of Thoth is not closed. It turns within you with every moment you choose. Alignment over reaction. With every boundary you set without anger. With every truth you speak without attachment. With every path you walk without seeking recognition. This is your initiation into the ancient current that moves without beginning or end. You are not reading the book. You are becoming the book, and through you, it continues to write itself into the fabric of time. So, remember this. When the world tempts you to shrink, expand. When your past knocks, do not answer. When silence arrives, enter it. When you are asked who you are, let your eyes answer. When nothing makes sense, stand still, for clarity is not given to those who panic, but to those who remain. You are not here to escape the dark. You are here to carry light into it, not as a savior, not as a teacher, but as a presence that reveals what is hidden simply by being. This is the transmission, not a prophecy, not a sermon. A reminder that you are not late, that you are not lost, that you are not broken. You are unfolding. You are remembering. You are arriving at the very point your soul agreed to reach long before you knew this language, long before you called this body yours. And now that you are here, know this. Nothing behind you defines you. Nothing outside you controls you. Nothing ahead of you will break you. You have passed the final gate. The silence you now carry is not emptiness. It is power disguised as peace. 14. Soft, cosmic call to action. Return for the next revelation. There is no finish line in this path. No certificate. No public moment of applause. Only the quiet confirmation that something ancient inside you has awakened, and it will not sleep again. What you've received here is not content. It is contact. A signal sent not to your ears, but to your alignment. A message wrapped in silence, decoded only by those who have crossed the inner thresholds and left their old selves behind. You are no longer watching a video. You are witnessing yourself from a higher vantage point, one that sees the purpose behind your pain, one that recognizes the pattern in your unfolding, one that remembers the reason you arrived here now. Not earlier, not later, but now. This is not the end. This is the opening of a new current. A current that does not rush, does not beg, does not shout. It moves in precision. It moves through resonance. And now that you're in it, the next message will come not because you search for it, but because you maintain the frequency that attracts it. The universe does not withhold truth. It reveals it when you become the version of yourself that no longer distorts it. And now, you are that version, sharpened by silence, humbled by initiation, aligned through choice, not force. The next revelation waits, but it will not arrive through urgency. It will arrive through readiness. It will appear in the same way this one did, perfectly timed, perfectly placed, impossibly aligned with your moment of highest reception. Until then, walk with stillness. Let your days be temples. Let your silence be language. Let your energy enter spaces before you do. Let your life become the message others don't know they've been waiting to feel. You were not called to convert. You were called to embody. You do not need to chase what's next. You only need to stay aligned with what's true, because truth attracts truth, and clarity opens doors that effort cannot touch. When you begin to forget, return to this space. When the world pulls you into noise, return to this silence. When your light dims beneath the weight of external pressure, remember who you are in this exact frequency. Not a seeker, not a student, a presence. A mirror, a carrier of order in a world addicted to chaos. And when you are ready, not rushed, not pressured, but deeply ready, return. There will be another message waiting, one crafted for the version of you that rises from the choices you make between now and then. It will not look for views. It will look for resonance. It will not reach for many. It will find the few who remember how to feel before they think, how to see without eyes, how to awaken in silence without asking for permission, until that next message reveals itself. Carry this one with discipline. Carry it in how you breathe, how you move, how you choose, how you remain. Not as a ritual, as a rhythm, one that cannot be taught, only remembered. You are not following a path. You are becoming one, and others will walk it because you walked it first. Remain ready, remain silent, remain aligned. The next page will turn when your soul is ready to read it. And when it does, you will already be here.